family with us made it even better. It was a wonderful time. Thank you for that. Then I ate lunch Monday with Miss Lily and Leaf and had a wonderful time there learning about bees, by the way. That's what I did after lunch. I'd never seen the inside of a bee. I've seen the white boxes. I didn't know what was inside there. We got to take a look inside there. If you've never seen that, by the way, interesting process. Make Leaf show you what's inside the box. Barb and Deb fed me on Monday night, and I appreciate that. It's always good to go over there and talk bad about Tyler. It's wonderful to see them. I know they miss him. I know that trip's upcoming for them soon, but it probably can't be soon enough. And so we had a good night that night. I ate at Ken and Shirley's house Tuesday for lunch. And we had a wonderful time going around just looking at all kinds of stuff that I don't see in my office. You really can't see that till you go out there. He showed me a little bit of this, a little bit of that. By the way, he's growing turnips off of one side of the road there, just where some extra space is. And being a kid from Alabama, you and I need to have a discussion. Y'all are eating the wrong end of the turnip. The part that stays in the ground you're supposed to throw away. That other part's the good part. Y'all just throw. I'll tell you what, anytime you clean those turnips and you want to throw that stuff away, just stick it in the mail for me. I'll cook it and send it back to you. Caleb and Emily fed me that night after that. By that time of the week, as we all were leaving Ken and Shirley's house, I thought it was them who were going to feed me that night. I just looked at Emily and said, "Are you remotely hungry?" Because I'm so full right now I could explode. We had some tacos over there. It was always a wonderful time. I hung out with Debbie and Paul today. Miss Debbie was kind enough to let me put my feet underneath her table. I appreciate that. And Paul showed me all kinds of things that I did not know. So Monday I was a beekeeper. Tuesday I was a farmer. Today I was a woodworker. I did all kinds of manly stuff this week. You know how hard it is to live with 3 girls? We don't even have a male dog. It's just me and a bunch of girls. And then tonight, Kathy and Lily over at Lily's house prepared a meal for me. We got to sit there, talk about one thing and then another. And it has been a fantastic week, and I wanted to make sure I did not forget somebody. But you guys have treated me like royalty, and you always do. And I surely do appreciate that. And I'm going to go home and not eat for about 10 days. This suit used to fit. For some reason, they must have shrunk on the way up here. It has been a wonderful time being here with you. And once again, it always is. It's a little weird coming north, but it still feels like home. And I appreciate your hospitality. I appreciate you opening your doors to me and answering whatever dumb question I have about farming or cars or whatever. If you want to know why I don't know about farming or cars, this one's quick. I blame it on I had the flu in the 8th grade and I was out for a couple of weeks from school, and that's where I think they took all the guys to the gym and taught them all about cars and farming and stuff. So that's where that comes from. We're going to start with the book of Malachi. Really, we're going to focus in on the book of Malachi this evening. By the way, Richardson, it's good to have you home. When you look at the book of Malachi, you're looking at a book that was written after the Jewish nation came back from exile. They've come back into Israel with Ezra and Nehemiah. They have been building a wall. They've been reestablishing all these things. And realistically for us, and it's just us tonight, Malachi is speaking to just God's people. He's not speaking to a group of people who don't know about God and need to begin following God. He's talking to a group of people who have, for lack of better terms, grown up in the church. They just know all about it. They've been doing it so long, they know everything about it. These are the people who God would lead out of Egyptian captivity in the book of Exodus. These are the people who, in the book of Leviticus, God would give a civil law and a spiritual spiritual law and a law of menus and diets and all sorts of things to them in the book of Leviticus. These are the same people in the book of Numbers that God would line up and say, how many do we have in the army? This is the group that in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses would, as a second time, have to restate this law to them. These are the people in the book of Joshua who took over cities like Jericho, and according to Joshua chapter 11, the last verse there, God would have given to them everything that He has promised to them through the promise of Abraham, the right land and all that, the right type of family, all those kinds of things. These are the people in the book of Judges who would look at themselves and say, we want to do things our own way. You ever met anybody like that? They're the ones who had to kind of have what we would call back home an attitude adjustment. They need a little bit of attitude adjustment every now and again, and they needed that in the book of Judges. These are the guys in the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel who would say, we need a king like everybody else, and God would give them a king in Saul, and it wouldn't be great, but give them a king in David, and it would be great, and in the 1st Kings and 2nd Kings, then give them another king like Saul, and it'd be pretty good, but that's about it. They would have a set of about 38 kings after that that wouldn't be worth two dead. Y'all know that phrase? Not worth two dead flies? All right, that means useless. And not worth anything there. These are the folks in the book of Psalms who David would write about the victories God has given to them and the defeats he could see at the door and how that would play against his emotions as the king leading them. This is the group in the book of Proverbs that that God would mention and say to them, if you live like this, you'll be righteous. If you live like that, you'll be wicked. This is the group in the book of Ecclesiastes to which King Saul, or Solomon rather, would write this. Here is the conclusion, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13, of all of life. You want to know what life is about? Write this down. Fear God, keep His commandments. That's what the King Solomon would say about those things. These are the folks in Isaiah who Isaiah would write and say, there's coming a new covenant. These are the folks in Jeremiah and Lamentations who Jeremiah would look at and see them going into exile and openly weep in the streets for them, thinking, I wish I could have done something else. I wish I could have helped you out some other kind of way. These are the men in Ezekiel who would be raised up in that valley of dry bones. This is the same group also with the book of Daniel as they're compiling those 39 books of the Old Testament who don't like him because he was in Babylon, who would put him in a group called the Other Writings. This is a group who in the book of Hosea would have one of the world's strongest PowerPoint lessons. And that lesson is, your wife's a prostitute, go buy her back. My wife does not like when I shorten that particular book into one main lesson, and I say the preacher and the prostitute. She doesn't like that idea. She said, what are you saying about me? I'm not saying anything about you, sweetheart. These are the same group of people in the books of Obadiah and Micah and Nahum who would have nations round about them who would be punished by God because of the way they acted toward Israel. This is the group that would get behind Jonah who said, I'm not going there to teach the gospel. And God would say, well, yes, you are. This is the group in the book of Nahum and Habakkuk and Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, those who would be coming back to build those walls, and yet they find themselves just a little bit lazy. It's the book in Ezra and Nehemiah where they would be led out of that captivity. This is the group that would have their roots with Esther, who stayed. And then we find them in the last book of the Old Testament. So if you are at the book of Matthew, you need to go 1 or 2 pages to your left. This is a group who is well acquainted with God, with what He can do and what He has already done and what He continues to do. And this is a group who's selfish. This is a group who is realistically thinking about how close is too close to sin. That's their mindset. How close is too close? So when you and I read through the book of Malachi, we're going to focus in on chapter 1 and chapter 3 this evening. We're going to look at a couple of questions God asks. And remember, as we've gone through this whole series, we've made this statement each night. God asks questions of man for contemplation and never for information. God doesn't need me to tell him anything. God doesn't wait on Billy's reply. You know, when he was creating this world, he never asked me a thing. I'm not going to help him out anyway. He's going to speak in chapter 1 through his prophet. And he's going to speak through his prophet again in chapter 3. But these are words coming from God himself. Look at verse number 6. Well, I'll tell you what. If you're looking at Malachi, this is written probably somewhere in between Ezra chapter 7 and Ezra chapter 10. This is where Malachi, get off there, would have been. There's 7 sins, by the way, found in Malachi, and that's divorce, skepticism, corrupt priesthood, a robbery of God, perjury, oppression, and adultery. All of those are found right in here. Well, it's like a good soap opera, huh? So when we start in verse 6, we see, a son honoreth his father, and a servant his master. If then I be father, where is my honor? If I be master, where is my fear? And thus saith the Lord of hosts to you. And you say, oh, those are 2 good questions. We haven't got to the question yet, but we're going to build up to it. Look at verse number 7. You offer polluted bread. Oh, we didn't get through 6. O priest, despise not my name. And you say, here's our one of our questions. Wherein have we despised thy name? And he answers this. You offer polluted bread upon my altar. And you say, wherein have we polluted thee? And that you say, the table of the Lord is contemptible. And ye offer blind for the sacrifice. Is it not evil? If you offer the lame and the sick, is it not evil? Offer it now your governor. See, will he be pleased with thee? Or accept thy person, saith the Lord of hosts. And now, I pray, beseech you God that he'll be gracious. This hath been your means. Will he regard you as persons, saith the Lord of hosts. Let me ask you a question. Look at verse number 8. Is it not evil? The requirement given in Leviticus all through there, as it's talking about the spiritual side of what he wants to do with that law, that is restated in the book of Deuteronomy, is this. When you offer to me a burnt offering, it can be a lamb or a goat. It can be a bird, small bird if you're poor. It can be a bullock under certain situations. For our ideas here, as we're looking at these animals, since he's speaking about these burnt offerings, he would say about those offerings first, got to be male. Got to be male. There is no way around it. You can have either a boy lamb or a girl lamb. And there are telltale signs of that, aren't there? And it needs to be this one and not that one. Let's scratch that statement. It has to be this one and not that one. Not it needs to be, it has to be this. And not only does it have to be male, it has to be less than 365 days old. And it can be 364, that's less than 365, right? It has to be less than a year. And this less than a year old lamb, male, here, if in old month number 7, he finds himself running over here and he gets a cut, he's out of the running. Well, he was perfect unto then. Yeah, but now he's not. He is required to be without spot, without blemish, a perfect, whole, under a year male lamb. There's a reason for that. All of those lambs and all of those sacrifices are simply a foreshadowing of Jesus the Christ. And we want that sacrifice perfect, don't you? Shake your head this way. Absolutely we do. Absolutely we do. And so those sacrifices that are holding the place for Jesus need to be that same quality. Well, when we look at Malachi, these guys have known for at least 300 years, probably longer than that, of what the requirement for God is. They know it. How many of you who are working know what April the 15th is? Yeah. And for you on the back row who are shaking your head this way, good. I hope you never have to know what it is. Well, April the 15th is the day you pay those taxes. Oh, yeah. Unless you pay them quarterly, like us. And then April 15th is the day you find out what else you owe on those taxes. That day comes around every year. And I know what's going to happen on the next April 15th. I'll find out what else I owe. And I know what's going to happen on the next one. And so when these animals come through here, this nation of Israel knows, just like you and I know about April 15th, they know what's going to happen with this animal, how it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like. But somewhere down the line, in my mind, I make a few assumptions. Somebody had a lamb somewhere that got kind of scratched. And it healed up. And the wool grew back. And in my mind, I think that guy said, they'll never know. And he's probably right. For people that maybe the high priest saw a pile of sheep that day, maybe they didn't notice it. Let me tell you who did know? God knew. And once he got away with that, then somebody down the road said, you know, old Jacob down there got away with this. I think we can do that. Until you get to Malachi chapter 1, verse number 8. And if you offer the blind for sacrifice, is it not evil? Look, now at this point in time, they're just rolling up any kind of broke down lamb they can find. This will do just fine. It's a boy. How old is it? It's about 16 years old. That ain't no good. It ain't got but one eye. It ain't good. It's barely limping on 3 legs. It's got an infection that's oozing out of its ears. That got to be good enough, right? That ain't what God required. But that's what they were given. Look at this next statement. What if you offer the lame and the sick? What if you pull up in this, somebody has this goat, they bring it out here, and I don't know about goats. They get the goat flu. Let's just pretend they do. And it has the worst case of whatever the goat flu is. This animal's just sick. You can tell his eyes are drooping. He looks like, like ragweed. He just kind of feels like this. And they say, oh, let's just give that to God. Why? Well, we don't want to eat it. If you offer those kinds of things to God, is it not evil? Well, here's what the people of Malachi today were saying. Yeah, but we're offering sacrifice to God. You're not. You're not offering a sacrifice to God. You're checking a box to make yourself feel good, and God doesn't accept that. The problem with Malachi's people in Malachi's day was they have forgotten the tenets that David would say about that threshing floor. That threshing floor he was going to buy, and the owner said, "You can just have it." And his statement was this: "I will not offer anything to God that doesn't cost me something." Ladies and gentlemen, understand this fact. If you're going to be a Christian, it's going to cost you something. If you're going to be a faithful Christian, it's going to cost you something. If you're going to be one who's following after God, it's going to cost you something. Here, it's going to cost them a better piece of livestock. Well, why would God care if you're just going to burn this animal anyway? Why would God care if it had a scratch on it or if it had a bad leg or whatever? We're just going to burn it. That's a great question. And that's one of those questions that I look at early in the morning and think, boy, I need some more sleep. But here's the fact. When they usher this animal out, God wants them to give him the best that they have in regards to these livestock. The one that fits that mold perfectly. That is, that they know what the mold is. They know how to make it fit, and they want to please God. Because God is going to roll out a sacrifice that's going to meet the criteria perfectly. And is going to pay the price to redeem us back to him. He wants them to feel the same type of sacrifice he's going to make. And so when he says to them, "Is it not evil?" what he's really saying to them is, how in this world do you think you have sacrifice? Oh, we gave a lamb. You gave a piece of trash. You gave a sorry excuse for an animal that you didn't even want. Keep going down in this verse. Here's what he says. Offer that thing to the government. You're going to give that to your governor. Give that to the mayor. Give that to those civil officials. And you tell me if he'll take it. That civil official is going to look at that animal and go, "Nobody want that thing. That little sorry animal right there. Nobody wants that. That lamb needs to be kicked in the head and killed. That ain't good for nothing." See, will he be pleased with thee, or if he'll accept it from you? He ain't going to do it. Church, being a Christian costs something. May cost friends that we had, who really what we find out is they weren't the best kinds of friends we could have had. May cost family members, who either will not study or won't accept or won't even talk to us about what the Bible would say, and perhaps they'll disguise it with, "You have your beliefs, I have mine." But what they're saying is, "I don't want to hear what you have to say about the Bible." And the most important thing in our life begins to divide us from those family members. Because your job. And unfortunately, at times, maybe even a spouse. It could cost us anything and everything on this side of eternity. But what's it worth? Is it worth costing us anything? Is it worth costing us everything? Where is the line? Where is the line drawn? I'll accept that it costs up to here, but no more. Well, Christian, let me tell you this. If you plan to be faithful to God, it would be Jesus who would say, "If you don't love me more than you love your family or your friends or your job or whatever it is, your hobbies, you're not worthy of me." So, Christians, it's going to cost us something. Let's look at the next question. Find it in chapter 3. He starts in verse number 3 of chapter 3. And he talks about things that are refined. And there's a reason I think he starts here. 3 and 4, he's talking about gold and silver being refined. So, in the silver shops throughout Jerusalem, even today, they'll get hunks of silver. Some may have just been dug out in the ground. Others may be other people's jewelry. And they'll put them inside of a crucible. And they'll begin to melt it down. And the guy who has the shop will kind of drop whatever it is in there in just very varied-sized bowls. And then he'll walk away from it and leave it for 10, 15 minutes. And that bowl will be just red hot. If it touched you, boy, it'd be all over but to cry. And he'll come back in about 10 minutes. And he'll look over there in it. And he'll see that the metals begin to break down. So he'll leave it another 10 minutes. And then after that, he'll come back and look over at it again. And he'll see it's turned into liquid, but it ain't exactly where he wants it yet. It'll start boiling. You know what boiling is? And he doesn't mess with it then either. He just leaves it alone until it stops boiling. And he's found out that he has burned out all the impurities when he looks over in that crucible and he sees his reflection. That's when he's burned it all out. It's just pure, unadulterated silver. Is there a lesson in there for us, church? You want to be refined? Would you like to reflect the image of God? You're going to go through some fire. There are going to be some boiling points. And he starts with the idea of refining silver. And he speaks about how these things are pure and how they become even more pure. And he goes into verse 7. Even from the days your fathers, you're gone away from my ordinances. You haven't kept them. Woo! Listen to what this mouthpiece of God is saying. You've been doing this a long time. You go back to your daddy, your granddaddy, your great-granddaddy, ain't none of them kept the law right. Well, then I guess if they can't do it, I can't do it either. Listen here, friend. You got a copy of the law just like them. You can do what it says. You don't have to follow the example of people who didn't do what it says. He goes on to say, return to me, and I will return to you, said the Lord of hosts. But you say, wherein shall we return? When he says, return to me, the implication is they at one point in time were there. But now they've gone off, and he's inviting them to come back. Look at verse number 8. Will a man rob God? Yet you've robbed me. And they say, wherein have we robbed thee? And God replies, in tithes and offerings. You're cursed with a curse. You've robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that it might be meat in mine house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing, there shall be not enough room to receive it. God's question is, will a man rob God? And you look at them in the first chapter, and you look at what God's saying here, and you go, well, they obviously have. Ooh, don't be so quick, church. As you know what's going to happen next, then that preacher's going to say, could we rob God too? They've robbed him in this particular chapter. He's going to mention tithes and offerings. Tithes and offerings are Old Testament giving. One is required, one is impulsory. Tithes are required by God underneath that Old Testament system of 10% of money, yep. Of animals, yep. Of spices, yep. I think we're getting 10% of everything. How many of you have 10 pair of shoes? Give up one pair. I got 10 pair. Give up one pair. No, I don't think so. They all have a certain purpose. We're looking at every single thing they own. They're giving a tenth of it. Now, if you have less than 10 shoes, I don't know how you divide that up to be a tenth. So you have to deal with that on your own. Tithes, that's the requirement. Offerings. What would be an offering? Suppose I'm riding down the road here in Eagleville. Eric has a flat tire. I mean, just blowed it all out. And so we load, his small tires from his small truck into the back of that large Jeep. And we take him down here, and he said, man, I don't have these. I can't get a tire. And I said, yeah, you can. I got it. Don't worry about it. Offerings there is seeing the need of some fellow Jewish person, meeting that need for them. It's above that which is required. It's compassion between the two. Tithes and offering. You've robbed me in things I've required. You've robbed me in things that should be compassionate toward other people. I don't even know how to even break even with you guys. Well, man robbed God? Not us. You robbed me in tithes and offerings. He said at that point, I'm going to curse you with a curse. And it seems then like he sort of backs up. He said, I'm going to curse you with a curse because you robbed me and robbed the whole nation. And then in verse 10, he backs up just a second. He's trying to make a point. When you say something real quick as a parent and you back up a little bit and say, that's going to be a little too hard. I get that a lot. What in the world are you doing? That's going to be hard. That's going to be too hard. Oh, my bad. You make girls cry real quick if you get loud and kind of over them a little bit. They get kind of scared. I'm like, Miss Brandon's like, that's too much. Well, I'm frustrated. Well, you still need to back her on down a cliff. It's too much. And perhaps in verse 9 he says, I'm going to curse you with a curse. Wait a minute, it's going to be too much. Just wait a minute. We don't have the Christ here yet. We don't have this bloodline where it's supposed to go yet. We're working our way that way. Let's try this a different way. Look at verse 10. Now, this is the only place in 66 books, the only place, chapter 3, verse number 10. This is the only place, you can write this down if you want to, where God will ever encourage someone to test him. Watch this. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. In the King James it says, improve me now. The original would lean more likely to this idea. Now, test me out. You do what I tell you to do. You test me out. See if I won't give to you and give over in abundance so much that you're choking on it. You remember those quails that came through when Jerusalem's wandering there in the desert wanderings, and they've already decided that they're tired of manna, which, if you go back and read it, sounds eerily similar like Krispy Kreme donuts. It's real close. We're so tired of eating donuts. This is awful. Yeah, it must be. But we want a quail, all right? If God says, I'm going to bring you some quail, I'm going to make you sick of them. When you see a quail like this, you're going to just get sick at your stomach. And the quails, boy, they come on in. A pile of them. And he gives them so many quails, they get sick of them. Here's the point where he says, you test me out and see, will I not provide for you and provide for you and provide for you so that your cup overflows. Is there a lesson in that, church? Boy, I hope so. Everybody sitting in this room begins to smile and their eyes begin to glimmer a little bit when we think of the blessings God would bestow on people. We get to think about that and it makes us happy, doesn't it? There's a contingency with that blessing. Don't miss chapter 3, verse 10a, being blinded by chapter 3, verse 10b. Notice how he starts out. Go back. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse. He said, well, we don't tithe today. Let me change it into 2024. Do what I tell you to do. And what we worship the way you tell us to. This is this is my life. This is how we lived according. Do all of it. Work the way I tell you to. Drive the way I tell you to. Live the way I tell you to. Worship the way I tell you to. Take care of the folks who are not even members of the church the way I tell you to. You do the things that are required to be a shining light like Jesus the Christ, and I guarantee you, they won't need those numbers anymore. Attendants are offered. You don't think God has enough money to run his own kingdom? Raise your hand if you think God needs your money. Now, how does it get from here to there? I don't know. That ain't my job either. You think he can't put more than 41 people in here? How much? Can you put 100 people in here? Would it be tight? You got to get in there like you love each other? Would it be okay to put chairs in the aisle? You know how you do that? You live like Christ. You do what he says, and he says, I guarantee you I'll bless you. But we look at the blessings so much, and we forget that we've got to do something in order to receive that blessing. And that's me included. That's me included. You know, at times I think my job is be prepared for Sunday and Wednesday and make sure the kids are taken care of, that kind of thing. But that job goes further than that. So 2 or 3 times a week, I deal with 24 or 25 kids, not even members of the church. Why? Because I have an opportunity to deal with them. You get that if your daughter's from drum major. I get to play with the drum line. I get to play with the pit. We get a chance to have an impact on kids who don't even know who I am. Every week, even tomorrow, I get a chance to talk to 100 football players. Why? Because I used to work on the field with a coach. You know, I don't know if you know this or not. Y'all play softball in the fall? Y'all play it in the spring too? No. Well, fall might not be this way up here, but in the spring in Arkansas, you'll near about drown playing softball. And so when that happens, somebody's got to come and open the grade, the field up, let it drain out, all those kinds of things. I get to do that. I've been doing that for 23 years because my wife's been coaching softball for 23 years. But she stopped this year. I get to retire. That's a non-paying gig. I get to retire. But I liked it. It's one of those things you get outside of the office, you get to get your hands dirty and do all those kinds of things. I didn't know this guy from Adam's House Cat 6 years ago. But now I go speak to the football team because I met him. They don't know me. They don't know me from anybody. But what they get exposed to each week, and for the drummer kids each week, is something from the Bible. Many times for the drummers it's in passing, because we don't have a lot of time just to sit there and talk about things. They get invited every week to come to church. They get invited every week to come to youth group stuff. They get invited to go wherever I go. I drive them around in the church van. If they go here and there in town to play stuff, so it's all at the Church Christ van and the Church Christ enclosed trailer, hauling a bunch of instruments and musicians someplace here or there. Don't y'all didn't like music? I love music, just not right here. We look so much for how God can bless us when what we should be looking for at church is how can I better serve God, and the result of that is the blessing. That's where we're missing it. Where our focus is too far this way. How else can I serve God today? What else can I do? How else can I help out God's kingdom to grow? And when we start thinking like that, imagine the blessings that will come in. Will a man rob God? You've robbed me in tithes and offerings. Is it not evil to put away God's restrictions and God's requirements in order to please myself? And we look around with our friends in the denominational world, and on a big blanketed level, it's exactly what they do. And if we're not careful, if we're not extremely careful, and if we're not conscious of what we're doing, we can do the same thing. We can do the same thing. You don't have to rob God, because within the idea of those sacrifices, these sacrifices already been made. Made some 2,000 years ago on a hill outside of Israel, about 6,000 miles away from here, that verified all of the sacrifices previous to, and cleansed those people and rolled forward to cleanse us. As I look around this room, I see people, most people who are Christians. I see a lot of people who've heard God's plan of salvation. If you haven't obeyed God, if you haven't put on Christ in baptism, that is going to be the single greatest decision you can make in your life. To be a follower of God through the blood of Jesus Christ. Not just by hearing and not just by believing, not just through repentance and not just through confession and not just through baptism. But all of those things together, laid one on top of each other, creates God's plan of salvation to save all of mankind back to Him. And while I'm looking at you, most of you have done those things. And that's great. But let me ask you, have we become so, I hate to use the word lackadaisical, but I don't do, have we become so lax in our lives and in our worship that we're beginning to rob God? Out of all the questions I will be pleased to hear on that day of judgment, one of those I don't ever want to deal with is, why did you rob me? Is our mindset where it should be? Is our goal for Eagleville where it should be? If it's not, you can change that. We still have breath in our lungs. We still have time on this side of eternity where I can come back to God and I can reevaluate what I should be doing, and I can sort of change gears and drive His path. But you have to be honest with yourself as you look at God's Word, and you have to say, fortunately, that's me. If you're subject to the invitation, whether through baptism or through returning back to God, why don't you do that now while we stand and while we sing? Someday